Welcome to Modern Life is Goodish. I'm Dave Gorman, and I am not a doctor. Having said that, I have picked up a few little bits of medical know-how along the way. For example, I do know where to look and what to look for if somebody has accidentally sprayed ant killer in their armpit. If you suspect someone has sprayed ant killer in their armpit, the place to look is their internet search history. For example, recently I was staying at a friend of mine's, Paul's, and in the morning I was using his laptop and I discovered that in his internet search history there was the phrase, accidentally sprayed armpits with ant killer. Dead giveaway. You can tell that is a sentence that has been typed in panic. As much as anything because it includes the word accidentally. As if somebody thinks there might be a different set of results for deliberately sprayed armpits with ant killer. It's probably only fair that I point out that the real reason that phrase could be found in Paul's internet search history is that I had stayed over at his house the night before, and that morning I'd done something very stupid and I was quite worried about my armpits. In my defence, we'd had a very big night out. To put that in context, I'd been so drunk I'd had my socks stolen while my shoes were still on. Anyway, I was Googling the effects of accidentally spraying armpits with ant killer because I wanted to know whether I needed medical attention. And when you're doing that sort of search, you might not know it, but you are establishing your Mortalification Index. On the horizontal axis here, you are measuring how likely something is to kill you, the threat to your mortality, while on the vertical axis, you're measuring how embarrassing the situation is or how likely you are to be mortified. It's only when you cross-reference those two things that you get your Mortalification Index. And that's how you know whether you need to go and see a doctor or not. I'll show you how it works. We start here. There is no predicament. All is well on both scores. But then, let's say you discover you've used the wrong glue on your vajazzle. Okay? Very unlikely to kill you, but really quite embarrassing. In which case, you probably don't submit yourself to the humiliation of speaking to a medical professional. I think for most people, a rule of thumb would be, is it more embarrassing than it is threatening? Obviously, if it's more threatening than embarrassing, you're in this red zone and you ought to go and see an actual doctor. And if it's more embarrassing than it is threatening, then you're in this green zone, in which case Dr. Google is sufficient. I think for most people that would be considered a sensible approach, although there is a particular bunch of people for whom finding themselves in the green zone means seeing an actual doctor and their camera crew, and that's why this exists. Scary people. Anyway, like I say, most people, I think, would deem this a sensible approach. Of course, the truth is, that's not at all sensible. If you think about it, if there is even the slightest risk of something killing you, go and see a doctor. How embarrassing something is should be of no relevance whatsoever. If you've just discovered, I don't know, that maybe your butt plug has been accidentally infused with uranium, put the embarrassment to one side and go and see a doctor. That appears a sensible approach, but it's not. Realistically, it should look more like that, shouldn't it, really? Although I think for a lot of people, myself included, certainly for a lot of men, it actually looks more like that. I'd rather die than expose myself to any sort of humiliation. When you Google something like that, you go on a weird journey, don't you? You're effectively walking into the world's largest hospital waiting room, and every letter you type, every little bit of information you give it puts you closer and closer to the specific department that you need. When you've only got as far as accidentally, your panic is still high. You're in a waiting room. You're in a waiting room surrounded by people who have no need of medical assistance. Accidentally vegan, you can sod off. Some of us are worried we might be dying here, mate. If veganism troubles you, go and have a sausage and get out of our way. Just hitting the space bar after the Y of accidentally changes everything. Suddenly, I'm surrounded by people who've accidentally consumed rubbing alcohol. And I imagine that's quite serious. And now I'm the one who's in the wrong department. These are people who've got very specific needs, surely. And you know what? Accidentally drank decaf can get out of the way. Every letter you type radically changes the landscape. You add an S, and there are people accidentally rejecting people they fancy on Tinder. when you add a P that you finally find you've moved to people who've accidentally sprayed things, and then, with the addition of an R, finally, we are all sprayers. And all of that has taken not much more than 3 seconds. You have to get as far as armpits before you start to get any real reassurance. Although, even then, there are idiots clogging up the system. No sympathy. A lot of questions, but no sympathy. No sympathy. Anyway, the important thing is that Paul and I worked it all out and nobody died, unless there were any ants in my armpit. Essentially, the advice is, don't do it. If you do it, definitely wash it off, but mainly, do not spray insecticide on your armpits, OK? Very good advice. Now, Paul and I were having a cup of tea, and he suddenly goes, "Oh, man, you're going to put this in one of your shows, aren't you?" And I said, "Well, yeah, probably. But don't worry about it. If I do, I'll pretend it was me." Now, of course, none of this would have happened if he'd been content to deal with his ant problem the traditional way, using boiling water, although I'm now obliged to point out, do not pour boiling water on your armpits. Don't do that. You have to wonder, how stupid do you have to be to spray insecticide on your armpits? Right? The truth is, Paul is quite a smart cookie. No flies on him. And that is working hard to tell you it is dangerous and not to be messed with. Those are nature's danger colours. What we're talking about here is something called Apo Semitism. Apo Semitism, not something you want to get drunk and talk to Ken Livingstone about. You might not know the word, but you do know what Apo Semitism is. In particular, we're really talking about aposematic colouring. That frog is sending you a signal, eat me, and we both die. That is Apo Semitism in a nutshell. The classic warning colours are actually yellow and black. When we see it, it triggers something deep in our brain. I think that's why the manufacturers of these signs use those colours. And it doesn't matter what it's a warning for, whether it's radiation or electrocution, loose flooring, or even just a fidget spinner. We know that these creatures are dangerous. They should be avoided at all costs. Do not approach, stay well clear, back off. We know that.
Nearly 2 million people are victims of street crime every year.
Yeah, but Dom isn't one of them. Because the world instinctively knows he can only be approached with extreme caution. So we know that aposemitism works, and that is why that frog is red. And they've used that colour on the tin of the ant killer. And it's why that wasp is black and yellow, and they've used those colours on the logo. So that can is screaming danger at the world, which would be fine if it hadn't been sitting on the same shelf in Paul's bathroom as this deodorant. This isn't a one-off. This is a genuine photo from Paul's bathroom. Why do his toiletries look like they want to kill you? There's even snake venom in his face scrub, for crying out loud. What kind of macho nonsense is this? How did men's toiletries get like that? Men won't clean themselves unless it makes them feel like they're survivalists. This is a dangerous route to go down, isn't it? This is messing with nature. We know that aposemitism exists. That's why we are hardwired to have a natural fear of these colours. But it's in our DNA as a result of millions of years of evolution. If we spend the next few millennia using the same colours for products that are actually nice for us, don't we run the risk of eroding that natural fear? Eventually, we'll start seeing the red and yellow and black combinations as nice, cosy, something that means, oh, that'll make me smell nice, which is dangerous. Because in a few millennia, our descendants will be dying because they're picking these things up and rubbing them on their faces. Or worse still, shaking hands with that. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a couple of minutes to reflect on the rather worrying implications of all this. I'll see you after the break. Gorman, and this is Modern Life is Goodish, where we have been talking about warning signs. This is one that's obeying all of the rules. It's yellow and black, and as we've already discussed, that makes the sense of threat feel very real. Of course, there's more than one way to achieve that same effect, and for fans of warning signs, the beware of the dog genre is about as diverse as it gets. Here, for example, they're using red, but they really alert you to the danger by depicting a dog that's baring its teeth. And just in case we don't get the message, the words "enter at your own risk" carry a very explicit threat. Here, for example, the dog looks more docile, but the threat remains because they've used the word Rottweiler, effectively a brand name that says, I can kill you. But I think my favourite beware of the dog sign is one that I see quite regularly on my walk to work. It's my favourite beware of the dog sign because it doesn't actually say beware of the dog. It says, be aware of the dog. I'm never quite sure what I'm supposed to take away from this message. Beware and be aware mean different things, don't they? I mean, if you were staying at someone's house and they left a note saying, beware of the shower, you wouldn't use it. That sounds like an electrocution risk, doesn't it? But if it said, be aware of the shower, you'd think, right, might be a bit drippy. Better make sure I keep the curtain inside the bathtub, that'll be all right. The thing with these people is, I don't even know if they've got a dog. Maybe they're just saying, please be aware of the dog as a species. There's not enough dog awareness in the world. Please spare a thought for the dog while you go about your business. Here's another dog warning sign from round my way. This one says, I live here. This one always confuses me. It's got a Doberman on it, and like the Rottweiler, I understand that the Doberman breed carries an explicit threat, but I never feel completely threatened by this sign. I think because of the use of the word I. It's the implication that the dog is responsible for this sign, that he wrote it, or dictated it, or at the very least chose it at the shop. Even though I know it's meant to be a threat, a part of me always sees that and thinks, come on, if the dog is sentient enough to choose a sign, I think we could probably reason things out between ourselves, would be OK. Of course, there are also beware of the human signs out there too, like this one. This is what I'm talking about, this fella here. That's the cardboard policeman, who I think is there to deter shoplifting. I don't know if Pound World are responsible or if this is some kind of police initiative. Apparently, a lot of police forces do use them. According to the Mail, almost half of Britain's police forces have invested in the replicas since 2008. They vary in price quite significantly, depending on which force is doing the buying. You get £25 a pop in South Yorkshire to £255 a plod in Gwent. It makes you think, doesn't it? That really makes you think. It made me think. Specifically, it made me think, I am stealing me one of those. I didn't. Of course I didn't. I didn't really. That's one we bought for reasons I will explain later on in the show. I think a cardboard policeman is going to suit some duties more than others. Some things he'll be good at, other things he's just not cut out for the job. For example, it makes sense to me that a cardboard policeman could be used to control speeding. I understand why that is effective. The life-size officer stands at the side of the road, pointing a radar gun at cars. If you're a bad boy, driving at 80 miles an hour, you're going to think that's a real policeman and hit the brake. And by the time you've realised that he's cardboard, he's already done his job, hasn't he? Of course people think he's real. I mean, if people think that this woman's hairdryer is a real radar gun, then how are they not going to fall for the cardboard policeman? And they do, by the way, they do. I love this woman.
I have never seen so many people's brake lights go on, and all it is a hairdryer.
Isn't she fantastic? What a hero! Policing her own community, keeping the streets safe. But let's be honest, she doesn't exactly look as if she's working in an official capacity, does she? Don't get me wrong, she's got a unique take on a high-vis vest. I like that, but she's not. She's not a pretend policeman, is she? She's not. But this doesn't explain how the Pound World cop works, does it? I mean, if you're a shoplifter, even if you thought he was a policeman for a split second, by the time you're in the shop, you know he's not, so I'm not sure how he's then supposed to stop you. There is some science to suggest it might well work, not because he's in a uniform, but in spite of it. Some people think you can effectively reduce bad behaviour simply by placing pictures of eyes around the place. This is a bike shed that I use near work sometimes. As you can see, there is a sign on the wall there saying, "We are watching you." And there is research to suggest this actually works. Here's an article in the New Scientist about it. Here's another in Atlas Obscura. They call it eye image compliance. I've been putting it to the test recently, actually. You know, I told you earlier I'd had my socks stolen the other day. Well, I'm determined not to let that happen again. So I've started wearing these. Little black and yellow socks with little googly eyes on them. And you know what? It's working so far, isn't it? So, no complaints. We've also been testing the concept of eye image compliance back at Goodish HQ recently. We've had a little bit of office thievery to deal with. We thought this might be the answer. We work out of a couple of different offices for the show, and this is one of them, OK? I'm going to talk you through the layout, give you the lay of the land. This is the shape of the office, OK? Just imagine we've sliced off the roof and we're looking straight down. If it helps, that's the carpet, OK? Now, there is actually a corner office in that corner there that belongs to we don't know who. We see a man going in and out of there, but he's never said hello and no one knows his name and nobody knows what he does. Very, very mysterious. There is also a pillar in the room about there. If I put the photo alongside it, you should be able to start to sort of match the two up. So, for example, that red line there represents the door into the corner office that you see there. And that photo was taken from somewhere about there. That's the kind of perspective we're dealing with, OK? You're looking at that collection of desks. Just to make it really clear, that little cluster of desks there is that collection of desks there, OK? But obviously, this diagram only shows you so much of the office, doesn't it? It really is quite a big office, a lot of different people in there working on different shows at different times. Now, this corner down here, that is Modern Life is Goodish. That's where we are based. And the reason I'm getting all forensic on you is this. That there is our sweet bowl, yeah? We like a treat every now and again. We like a bit of sugar in our lives. So we have a little treat bowl to dip into to keep us going. There it is, you can see it in the photo. There it is there, OK? Now, we know we could put it somewhere less accessible to other shows if we wanted to. We could put it here or here, that would be fine, but we don't do that. We put it there, and we do that because we are team players. We are happy for other people to dip in and take some sugar every now and then. We are very community-minded like that. We think it makes the office a friendlier, nicer place to be. Now, in this office, the main doors in and out are here, here, and here. So as you can imagine, there is quite a lot of traffic past our sugar bowl. And as people go, they often dip in. We are 100% fine with that. But every now and then, we will all leave the office. Maybe we'll all go off to lunch together, or we'll go off to film something. There'll be some reason why none of us are there for an hour or so. And when we get back, more sweets than is decent have been taken. Now, I can't call it theft because, as I said, we are happy for people to dip in every now and then. But the fact is, when we're there, 4 or 5 people might say, oh, do you mind? Have a little something. But when we're gone, they all wipe us out, like vultures. And we all know that a line is being crossed there, don't we? Recently, we went for lunch, we left the sweet bowl looking like that. When we got back, it looked like that. That's taking the piss, isn't it? That is a couple of chews and a fried egg. Do you know what? Clearly, that's been left by someone thinking that's embarrassing. We can't take everything. And I know that because the sweets we'd bought didn't include any fried eggs. So I thought, why not do an experiment with our supply of sugar using eye image compliance? Let's get a cardboard figure to guard our sweets. But who should it be? Well, there's only one person you can get to guard your sugar, isn't there? Yeah. Absolutely. It's obvious, isn't it? It's obvious. There were a couple of reasons for choosing Lord Sugar. One, he's called Sugar. 2, we already had a cardboard cutout for reasons that date back to Series 2 and that none of us can quite remember. So we got him out of the prop store, dusted him down, and put him to work guarding our sweet bowl. And do you know what? It bloody works. I don't have precise numbers, but I can tell you that we have never been cleaned out when we leave Lord Sugar on duty. People dip in a little bit, but they don't push the boundaries. They treat us with respect. We can go off for lunch, come back, 2 or 3 little bags of sweets have gone. The rest are still in the bowl. We thought, that is interesting, right? I wonder if it's anything to do with him being Lord Sugar, or is it just the fact that it's a pair of human eyes? So obviously we thought, well, let's try it out with somebody else instead. And do you know what? Lord Sugar, very effective. Noel, not so effective. Honestly, the difference between the two of them is so marked. The first day we put Noel on the job, it seemed to work. Day 2, back from lunch, cleaned out. We thought, OK, maybe the whole effect of the cardboard person has worn off. We put Lord Sugar back on duty. A whole week, nothing stolen. Swapped him for Noel again, half a day, everything gone. They respect Lord Sugar, they do not respect Noel Edmonds. Now, I don't know what the reason is behind it. Maybe it's because Lord Sugar is an authority figure. We thought that was worth testing as well. We didn't get a cardboard cutout for this. We just got a picture of the most authoritative authority figure we could think of. Top of the tree, the Queen. We put a picture of the Queen up, and you know what? The picture of the Queen got stolen. How outrageous is that? Very upsetting, because that was my favourite picture of the Queen as well. It really was. I love that picture. Anyway, it was... Oh, hang on. It's bloody happened again. Jesus Christ. Can't believe this. Someone's stolen my bloody socks. Which one of you did that? For crying out... What's... Right, we're going to make all this lot turn out their pockets while you have a little break. Oh, which one of you did this? Come on. Who was it? Who's done this? Welcome back to Modern Life is Goodish. Now, before the break, we were talking about how some police forces use pretend people to try and influence our behaviour. But, of course, it's not just police forces that do that. Other people do it too. And when I say other people, what I mean is Noel Edmonds. Now, if you're not familiar with all of Noel's machinations, this is the story I'm referring to. Noel Edmonds uses shop mannequin to stop people hailing his black cab. And as you can see, Noel is driving his cab there, and that there is the mannequin that lives in the back of his cab to stop people trying to hail it. Now, I realise that for a lot of you, that's quite a lot of information to unpack all in one go. It's easy to get hung up on the small details. You haven't got past the fact that he drives a cab yet. He does. It's an unlicensed cab, which is surprising in a way, because surely he, of all people, has done the knowledge. He's one of a few celebs who famously drive black cabs. There's Stephen Fry, for example, and there's Prince Philip. I'm assuming that if you've gone to the effort of owning an unlicensed black cab, you've done so in order to reap the benefits that licensed cabs enjoy. For example, driving in bus lanes. As you can see, Noel has been caught out driving illegally in bus lanes in the past. Stephen Fry has denied doing so.
My own cab, on the other hand, not that I would admit to using bus lanes, obviously in public, because it's illegal if you're not a licensed cabbie.
But as you can see...
But, let's face it, they do exist.
He denied it in the most admitting it really way possible. Anyway, back to Noel, and you know what? The Daily Mail love the saga of him, his cab and his shop dummy. They keep returning to the well for more. They had a nice juicy story about the time that Noel gave his dummy a Twitter account. Another one, basically asking if he was sane, when it turned out he was taking his dummy absolutely everywhere with him. Now, interestingly, you can see that in the first story, the mannequin was blonde, but here in story 3, she is a brunette. It's his wife who's blonde. There is an explanation for why she's changed her look. In the second story, it says, Edmonds has started to dress the dummy, named Candice, differently each week and place it in a variety of poses. At least that's his excuse. I suspect the real reason is he's realised, hang on, my wife is also blonde. This gives her an opportunity to dress up as the dummy, get in the back of the taxi and sneak herself out of the compound. I can't let that happen. No. Security at all times. I'm kidding, of course. By all accounts, Noel and Liz are very happily married. And that's nice to know. In fact, the shop dummy was actually his wife's idea. She bought him the dummy as a present. Yeah. As you can see here, Noel started placing Candice in the back of his taxi at the suggestion of his third wife, you see? I feel a little bit bad here, because I know that when I see the phrase third wife, I normally feel a tinge of sadness, knowing that whatever the circumstances, there's obviously been some bad times. I know it's wrong, but in Noel's case, the knowledge that he's twice divorced made me just a tiny bit happy. Not in a cruel way, not in a cruel way. It's just the knowledge that at some point 2 different women have had to contemplate the question, to Noel or de-Noel. It's just nice, isn't it? Anyway, there are so many delicious details to savour in these stories. For example, we learn that Noel says he can remember the exact minute Liz walked into his life, yeah? October the 6th, 2006 at 11 a.m. He remembers it exactly. When she came into my dressing room, I knew she was there before I turned round. Now, I don't want to reveal too many showbiz secrets here, ladies and gentlemen, but the one thing dressing rooms are full of... mirrors. Very hard to be in a dressing room and not have a sight of the door. Of course, there's also plenty of details in these stories about what purpose the dummy serves. Noel tells us that he got her to stop people flagging me down in the cab. She's there to stop pedestrians trying to flag him down. He's telling us that he was constantly being flagged down, that apparently people were permanently trying to hail you in the street. You get the sense that it really annoyed him that people were trying to hail his cab. Do you know what, Noel? If that annoys you, there's an even easier way of stopping people from trying to hail your cab. And that is, don't drive a bloody cab, you idiot! You can't have it both ways. You want to drive in the bus lane and have all the advantages of a cab. You can't have none of the disadvantages of a cab, which is the occasional stranger doing that at you, which isn't really that much of a problem anyway, is it? Look, this sign says bus lane, taxi lane, cycle lane. That's what it says. It doesn't say Noel Edmonds lane, does it? It doesn't. So back off, Buster. Maybe I'm being a bit harsh on the man. Maybe it's just a bit of cheek on his part. He's just gaming the system. I don't know. I mean, some people bloody love him. They really do. You only have to visit the Deal or No Deal forums to see that, honestly. Like this chap, for example, who says, all hail Noel Edmonds. Don't do that. He hates that. Don't do that. Please, don't do that. Wind him up like you wouldn't believe. Don't do that. Don't. Now, I don't want you to think that this is just a Daily Mail obsession. Lots of other papers have written about this. The Mirror have been there, as have The Star, and their military wing, The Express. They've all been there. Been on the BBC, AOL, even The Guardian. They've all, at one point, written about the man, the mannequin, and/or the cab. And it seems to be a story that always provokes a reaction. And you know me, ladies and gentlemen. When a story like that is bubbling away, I get a whiff of it on the breeze, and there is only one place I'll be heading. And that's the bottom of the internet. I've read every comment I could find on every related story. I've taken my favourites of those comments and turned them into something that I like to call a found poem that I would like to perform for you now. What a weirdo. Leave Noel alone. He's just having a laugh. That's the thing with Noel. He always was a right nut balloon. And I used to find it entertaining when he was doing it on television. But now he is just doing it for its own sake. It is making me uncomfortable. So unless this turns out to be part of some secret TV show, I, for one, will not be tuning in. Noel is right. People take life far too seriously. We should all make an effort to put some fun into things. That's all Noel is doing. It's not all he is doing. He is also driving illegally in bus lanes, meaning that he gets to work quickly while we, the normal people, get stuck in traffic. Surely Noel being in a bus lane means there is one less traffic to be stuck in. Noel Edmonds, olden demons. Makes you think. This is supposed to deter strangers, but I bet it deters friends too. It would certainly deter me. Obviously, I'm not one of his friends, but I always thought that I would have been if I'd met him. I've stopped thinking that now. If you ask me, there is something sinister about this character. I can't prove it, but I've always had the feeling that he bullies his so-called friend, Keith Chegwin. Chegg has always seemed to adore Noel, but Noel had no love in his eyes for Cheggs. He always seemed to belittle him, and that was before he made him play Mr. Blobby for all those years. Edmonds is a qualified helicopter pilot. Fact. A helicopter is quicker than a car. Fact. Even one that is allowed to use bus lanes. Fact. Ergo, this story just does not add up. And so, the question becomes, what's he really up to? I saw him driving his taxi a couple of months ago. I'm afraid to say that I did try to hail him. From 100 yards away, I couldn't see the dummy in the back. Nor, for that matter, could I see that Noel was driving. Of course, when he drove past, I did see that it was him. I smiled and waved, but that just seemed to upset him. Although, for all I know, he might just have been listening to something sad on the radio. I'll tell you what, that dummy, I would. I thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, now, I found found myself travelling through Stansted Airport on holiday recently, where I discovered that at Stansted Airport they have introduced an honesty system. Not in security, obviously. It's not. Oh, you say you know bombs, sir? On you go. Absolutely fine. No, they have an honesty system for selling water. It basically looks like this. And as you can see, all you do is you put £1 in the tin, you take a bottle of water, no one checks what you've done, there is no one on duty, nothing at all, not a sign, nothing. I didn't take a photo of it myself at the time, because there's something about taking a specific photo of a little detail in an airport that makes you feel like you might start attracting the wrong sort of attention. That's why I think it's perfect in an airport. You don't need warning signs in an airport, because an airport is one big warning sign. It's a high-security environment and something is at stake. Maybe you're off on honeymoon. You're not going to jeopardise that amazing, romantic, sexy, incredible, life-changing experience for the sake of a £1 bottle of water, are you? So I think it's the perfect place for an honesty system to work. Now, as it goes, Stansted wasn't the first place to try the idea. Dublin Airport were doing it before them, and because they've been doing it for a little while, they've actually got the figures to show quite how honest people were. And it's an impressive 92%. Only 8% of the water is lost to theft. I'm surprised it's even as high as 8%, to be honest. But it got me thinking. If there's an honesty rating of 92% in an airport with all its security, what level of honesty would you get elsewhere? Like here, for example, I wanted to know how honest people would be if they were somewhere with less jeopardy, which is why downstairs this evening, while you lot were all queuing up, ready to come in, we had this in the box office, an honesty box water station for you lovely people. Now, we put out 100 bottles of water, and I was just handed the figures in the break. And I can tell you, ladies and gentlemen, 31 bottles were gone, which means we should have had £31 in our bucket. What we had in the bucket was £28 and 7 pence. Which means we have an honesty rating here of 90.5%. You are 1.5% less honest than if you were in an airport. You have 1.5% less respect for me than you have for Stansted. The small change, people, 7 pence. It was a 5 and 2 ones, by the way. That is clearly people playing the old, this'll make roughly the right noise, I think I'll get away with it game. They weren't the only people to put things in that weren't pound coins. One person put a £10 note, folded like that, in. And if people at home are wondering why this lot are reacting, don't worry, it's a callback to Series 3, Episode 2. Anyway, whoever you are, I hope you took 10 bottles of water. Because if you only took 1 bottle, not only have you spent £9 doing a 2-year-old callback, it would also mean that the rest of this lot have only contributed £18.7 for the remaining 30 bottles, and that lowers us to 60%. There was also one person who put a note in which says, I know this is a trap, Dave, but I don't know how. What this really illustrates is that this could never be a perfect experiment, because you're not a proper control group, are you? You're coming to see this show. You probably know that we've played secret games with audiences in the past, and so on some level, you're on guard. I mean, you're queuing up for this show. You know you could steal a bottle of water, but are you really going to jeopardise an amazing, romantic, sexy, incredible, life-changing experience like this for the sake of a £1 bottle of water? And I'm genuinely curious as to how honest people would be in a normal situation. Not at an airport, not at a TV recording, but, you know, just out and about. At a market, say. Which is why, a few weeks ago, I rented a market stall for a day at Old Spitalfields Market in the East End of London. And I used it to sell bottles of water with no staff, just an honesty box, OK? That's the store right there. Now, it was a nice sunny June day, so I thought that'd be good for selling water. If it's warm, people are going to want water. And I got a pitch next to a blanket stall, which I thought could only help. That's going to make people feel warmer, isn't it? That's got to help. And as you can see, there is a bucket for the money there, and it's actually chained to the stall. That is not going anywhere. We know that. That's locked down. Now, I didn't want to be anywhere near the experiment myself, just on the off chance that someone recognised me, twigged that something was going on. So I had a couple of friends monitoring what was happening. We didn't set up a camera crew. If we did, it would change it. We just had a couple of friends at a safe distance, obviously. I said to them, take a few photos, keep your eye on things, but don't police it. If you see someone stealing stuff, let them. That's what we're measuring. Don't interfere. And then I thought, hang on. We've got the stall for a few hours. Why restrict ourselves to one experiment? Why not test some other stuff as well? For example, we could see whether a cardboard police officer hanging around would make people more or less honest than just a bucket. So that's why we bought that cardboard policewoman I showed you earlier. Let's bring in the cardboard policewoman. Here she is. Cardboard policewoman, ladies and gentlemen. Put her on duty for an hour. All right? We'll do an hour with just the bucket and then an hour with the policewoman, OK? And then I thought, we've got about 6 hours on the market. What else could we try? I began to think, who else could we go with? Now, as you know, back in the office, you know this, we've got a Lord Sugar. But Lord Sugar is not going anywhere. He's too good at guarding our sugar. Well, didn't give him a day off, no. But we've got a Noel that is proving to be absolutely useless, so we thought we might as well bring him along, throw him into the mix. So we thought we'd try an hour with a Noel as well. Try an hour with the Noel. Who else can we get? I think, well, we're in the East End. Who are East Enders going to respect? Let's have a look. Got ourselves a Kempy. Got ourselves a Kempy. And I can see some of you, you're wrinkling your noses now, thinking this isn't a scientific experiment. It bloody is, lady, and it absolutely is. It's as scientific as it's possible to be. We've got ourselves a cocktail. Got ourselves a cocktail. There's room for one more. There is room for one more. Who else could we get? I thought, I know. The person who made me behave at my absolute best when I was a kid. Which is obvious, isn't it, when you think about it? That is my mum in her 1970s incarnation. So we had one made of my mum from the 1970s. There she is. There's my mum. And that there, ladies and gentlemen, that completes our band of merry cardboard guards. Or guardboards, if you will. I know, right now I feel like I'm in a really cut-price Sgt. Pepper's album cover. Sort of not quite right. Anyway. Incidentally, these things are advertised as being life-sized, but I'll be honest with you, I've met my mum. She's smaller than me, but not this small. And I've met Brian Cox, and he's definitely taller than me, so I'm not convinced these are... I think this might be false advertising, basically. I started to get the sense they weren't being 100% accurate about the dimensions when we were considering buying ourselves a Warwick Davis. That's what the website shows you when you look at that picture. But when you choose that image instead, you see they're claiming this life-size image of Warwick Davis to be approximately 6 foot tall. Now, come on. That can't be right, can it? That can't be right. They do the same thing with Danny DeVito as well. Advertised as life-size, approximately 6 foot tall. Come on. Incidentally, you know that frequently bought together feature on Amazon? Yeah? This is very guessable. Who do you think is frequently bought with Danny DeVito? No, it's Ainsley Harriott. Frequently bought together. Is that possible? Is it possible that more than 3 people have bought that combination? Anyway, this is the cast that we settled on. Now, there are a couple of tiny caveats here. Obviously, standing guard at different times of day means different levels of footfall. The lunchtime rush could affect the numbers, probably favouring Noel and Kemp, I would have thought. Anyway, my friends who were running the experiment from afar, their job was to go in every hour, count up the money, refresh the water stocks to the same starting level of 100 bottles and swap over the guard boards. They did say they saw a few people going over and sort of taking selfies with some of them. We thought we'd see if anyone had posted them online, so we're searching. It's obviously not easy. There's no obvious hashtag. We don't know what they've written with their photo. But we did find a couple on Twitter. We got this one. Why does this exist? Cardboard Kemp selling water at Spitalfields? Water, then a photo. Incidentally, you can see I've had to censor their face for legal reasons. That's the only reason that's going on there. We also found this one. That is my mother! That is my mother! That is my mum, for crying out loud. Come on. I'm sorry, Mum. I'm sorry. I am so sorry. Again, as you can see, I've had to censor their faces for legal reasons. My mum hasn't gone to Disneyland. Now, let's see how the 6 setups did, ladies and gentlemen. I can tell you that the first two, the bucket and the policewoman, in their hours, they both took in exactly the same amount of money, £23 in both cases. However, the policewoman definitely seemed to inspire more honesty. The lonely bucket saw people take 31 bottles in total, whereas the policewoman saw people take 25 bottles. So clearly, having a cardboard policewoman is a much more effective system. That relates to an honesty level of 74% for the bucket and 92% for the policewoman. In the East End of London, a cardboard policewoman makes people behave as honestly as they would in an airport. Ladies and gentlemen, that is, I think, remarkable. Now, let's see how the others fared. They all took in varying amounts of money, as you'd expect. My mum took in the smallest amount, only £18. Brian Cox took in £22 and 85 pence. More of that, make the right sound. That's what's going on there. Noel, £31 and 50 pence. And then Ross Kemp, leading the pack, £35, £35. Definitely the most successful in terms of raking in the money. Let's see how many bottles were taken, though. My mum, 19 bottles. Only 1 bottle stolen. That's incredible honesty around my mum, giving her an honesty rating of 95%. Brian Cox, 26 bottles. That's pretty good, giving Cox an honesty rating of 88%. Pretty impressive. Noel, useless. There is no respect for Edmonds out there. 44 bottles taken, a large number of bottles, but given the amount of money that was taken, it gives him an honesty rating of 72%. Worse than a bucket by itself. I never thought I would legitimately have the excuse to say on television, Noel Edmonds, less use than an empty bucket. But I do. But, and these are the most remarkable figures of the entire experiment. Ross Kemp, ladies and gentlemen. 33 bottles! Fewer bottles taken than money received. Ross Kemp is basically demanding monies with menaces. What the hell is going on? Why would that happen? Is that a couple of people going, well, we took a sale fee, let's give him some money? I don't know what that is. But that puts Ross's honesty rating at 106%. 106%. That is remarkable, isn't it? Although, I'm very sad to report, about 5 minutes before the end of his shift, Kempy was stolen. I said to the guys looking after the stall, you saw him being taken away. You took a photo, why didn't you stop him? I said, you told us not to stop people if they're stealing because that's what you... I was only talking about the bloody water, you idiots! Incidentally, our channel's lawyers have said we've got to blur out that face in case it looks like I'm accusing someone of committing a crime. They were committing a crime! They were! That's what that is! Not only stealing him, but leaving our market stall looking quite unkempt. Now, that changes the sums. That changes the sums, because these things aren't cheap. We've had to pay for a replacement Kempy for tonight. These cost us more than 35 quid to make and get sent to our office. So in truth, the reality is, Kempy is in negative equity, ladies and gentlemen. Which means the moral of today's show is simple. If you want to run an honest business, get yourself a mum. But the immoral of our story is also simple. It turns out that the markup on bottled water is so huge, if you want to make a profit, get yourself an Edmonds. Yeah, it turns out the person who inspired the most honesty made the least profit, and the person who inspired the least honesty made the most profit. Which I think means we've proved that you can have honesty or profit, but not both. Oh well, enjoy the adverts. Thanks for watching. Good night.